Most entrepreneurs think they need more strategy in order to grow their business, and they never realize that you are the reason why your business isn't growing. In this episode, we talked to Jim Fortin about how to transform who you are so you can be the most powerful business owner that you've ever been. Now, a quick editor's note, the first 3 minutes of this episode are going to be a little bit of different audio than the rest because we had some technical difficulties with it. So let's get into it. Hi, I'm Brandon Lucero, and you're about to experience the new way to thrive in business, entrepreneurship, and life by leaning into who you are, what you love, and standing up for what you want to create. Get ready, because this is where we go against the grain, say no to outdated society norms, and we say yes to change in order to create a happier, more fulfilled world. Welcome to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. Today's going to be a really fun episode. One of the reasons why is this is a really special one for me. I can pinpoint maybe two specific people that have helped me in my journey of becoming successful, getting me to the level that I'm at. But not only in business, but just changing my life, the way I think, the way I view things. And the person we're having today, Jim Fortin, our guest today, is one of those people. We'll get into the story. We'll get into how we met. We'll get into what he does. And we're probably going to go a little deep on a certain topic that could transform your business, transform your life, and by default, transform the life of your employees, transform the life of your family. And I can say to you guys right now, what you're about to learn from Jim on this podcast has actually changed the life of my employees. It's changed the life of their families because of who they are now, who I've been. And this will be a very fun and special episode for me. Jim Fortin is a transformational coach. He's has 30 years of experience of working with a shaman, doing crazy cool things that I just still know that I don't even understand yet. So we can go really deep with this episode, and we might need to have Jim come back on another episode. But with that said, Jim, welcome to the podcast.
I'm glad to be here, and hopefully my camera's not on. Was it on? Because I'm kind of like wandering, just waiting for you to get to our time together. So I'm just kind of looking around all over the room.
Yes, your camera is on, but they're here for me. They're not here for you. So
got it. So okay, let's visit. What do you want to talk about?
Okay, so let's start by you. For context, can you tell people what it is that you do for those that don't know, basically who you are, what you do?
Yeah, in a nutshell, what I do is I help people transform their lives at a subconscious brain-based level. I help people literally let go of old patterns, old behaviors, things that do not serve them at a core level. And I help people learn to reprogram their subconscious mind and create new habits around what I call ways of being. Ways of being are everything from self-integrity, responsibility, the way we make choices, our vision, et cetera. I help people literally shift their life at a core level in a nutshell.
Okay. And who do you work with mostly?
Generally entrepreneurs, people that own their own business. I mean, I've worked the whole gamut, selling professionals, entrepreneurs like real estate agents and insurance agents and et cetera. But for the most part, I'd say probably 90% of my marketplace is, I'm just thinking here, entrepreneurs, obviously, but probably 90% of people I work with are online entrepreneurs, people also that follow you.
Okay. Now, one of the things that I want to talk about first is when we first met, this was probably maybe 8 years ago now?
At least, about 8 years ago. Yeah.
You were selling real estate packages, like you were selling coaching to real estate agents for $1,500 a piece.
Right.
And I remember when we first met, you were like, I have a good thing going. I just go and I do these talks. I sell these real estate coaching packages. And I just want to make $1 million a year. And I just want to chill. Yeah. And what you've done in the last 2 years, to me is like mind boggling, because we work with a lot of different clients. We work with a lot of different people. We run a lot of different campaigns. We run a lot of advertising, and the numbers that you report back to us and we see, like you don't see that in anyone else. Like it just doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So first of all, my first question to you about that is Why do you think that is? Why is it that you can come and honestly, it is a crowded space, like transformational coaching or coaching, entrepreneur coaching, it is a crowded space. But in a very short amount of time, you've been able to hit numbers and hit revenue and grow a following and do things honestly without a lot of paid out organically. And we don't see that very often, if ever. So is there like one answer or one core thing that you can tap into for us and kind of give us an explanation of what the heck you're doing?
I don't think there's one answer. I think it can be both mechanical and also the messaging. When I say mechanical, what I mean is I think I'm one of the first people that I put together an approach to transformation that comes from subconscious transformation, brain-based habits, and then the ancient wisdom. And then the messaging, I think part of just what I talk about a lot is shamanism, the ancient wisdom, and then I marry that with modern science. Not a lot of people are doing that. So I think it's a mix of those three things. And then the mechanical stuff is obviously the marketing, which you know that I know marketing and I
Right.
understand marketing. I think it's the way we've packaged it that our entire message for the most part is contrarian in that our most of our message is about, like, for example, our lead is that working until your eyeballs bleed and working harder is not going to get you ahead. It's not going to make you rich. So we lead all of our marketing, which is a mechanical part that I'm talking about. We lead all of our marketing with thought reversal, which is what you teach.
Yep.
And I think that pulls people in. And then middle of what we call the funnel, middle of the funnel is my podcast and air quote how to, but basically sharing information with them about how to create change. So I think it's that we probably at the right time in the right place approach the marketplace when it was ripe for
Yeah.
somebody to come in and just be different than everyone else out there. That would be my guess.
Well, something that I've observed, and the reason I bring up the whole real estate thing is because I remember
Yeah.
telling you back in the day, and this is totally me rubbing this in your face and telling you that I'm right. But I remember back in the day telling you, like, you need to do more. Like, your mission isn't to help real estate agents sell more homes. It's to help
Right.
people improve their lives and to do that stuff. And I remember getting some resistance, and you were like, I just want to make 500,000, $1 million a year. And I just want to chill at this age. I just want to chill. And now you're working harder than you ever have, and it's because you want to, but
Well, that's not true. I'm only working like 2 hours a week right now for real.
well, that's pretty good.
But I think what you're meaning to say is that I'm earning more money than what I thought I would earn. And I have a team, but I have the following. I have the mechanisms. I've got everything put together. So basically, I think what you're really meaning to say is that I have a business in place that most people don't have in a matter of just a couple of years by doing this. And it seemingly came together very easy. Maybe that's a better representation.
Well, I'll put it this way. When I say you're working more than you
Yeah.
ever have, I don't mean it in the context of you're putting in like 50, 60 hours. You and I are both, we both work with your brother-in-law, and there'd be days where
Right.
you're hit really hard with the energy, or you're hit really hard where you're
Right.
like out of commission. So
Yeah.
having to deal with all that, plus sometimes having to come in and put in hours at night to do stuff, I would say, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would say you're working. Are you still working more than now than you were back
No.
then? Still about the
No,
same?
right now, like even in my transformational coaching programs, I don't coach anymore. My coaches do.
Okay.
I have one business program that I do one call a week, but mainly the coaches coach in that quite literally. And even though we're personal friends and we stay at each other's houses and all that, I'm working less now than I have ever worked in my life, maybe 2 hours a week and attracting millions of dollars per year
Yeah.
in revenue.
It's amazing.
That would be a fair statement.
Okay, great. So when I look back at you working with real estate agents and then making this
Uh-huh.
transition into where you are, there's been a transform. Like, I can look at you and I can see the growth that you do, and everything's like you as a person, stable, consistent, no fear. Like, you're just, I don't know what the right word is. It's like if I looked at elements or atoms, it's like they'll be bouncing off the walls, and a lot of people try to build a business while bouncing off the walls. And we're
Yeah.
recording this while people are like we're in the middle of Corona like pandemic right now, and people are going
Right.
crazy and they're trying to build their businesses and they're like living in fear. But no matter what your environment is, you seem to be a very stable kind of
Mhm.
like atom while everyone else is going crazy. And I'm curious as to, would that be one of the reasons as to why you're seeing such great success? I mean, let's take marketing, let's take messaging, let's take that out of the equation because those are all elements. But at the core, the foundation, you as a person seems to be what has been able to take you from like doing these around the country real estate things to now a multi-million dollar business where you're not really working
Yeah.
that much.
I didn't really think about it, but maybe, and let me add there that, as you know, we launched. I mean, we opened the doors to TCP, the Transformational Coaching Program, the week that was the worst possible week for coronavirus. People were hoarding all over the country.
Yep.
And I mean, this is when people were hoarding toilet paper and hoarding the meat counters and everything. It was the worst possible coronavirus week. And we still did near $1 million in revenue that one week.
Yeah. That's pretty
We
good.
would have, yeah, we would have probably done 3 million had it not been for that happening that week.
Right.
But the reality is when I look at doing 1 million in literally the worst week in the history of internet marketing,
Yep.
no question, and we still are at the $1 million mark, I'm like, what's going on here? And I think part of it is because we've built our following. We have a very solid message. We put together a very solid, very sound message. The podcast would drive a lot of traffic, but I'm going to go back to also, I think a big part of the driver
Yep.
is me staying in my own space because I do what I love to do. But a big part of the driver is getting my messaging right, which is what you teach people how to do,
Yeah.
meaning our thought reversal. And we come from multiple places, but a very solid foundation of thought reversal, how the entire industry is doing it XYZ, and they're all doing it backwards. But the reality also is it's not just the thought reversal, is that we can back it up with our content and our training. So I think it's a combination of me just doing what I love to do and attracting that, the message, and then the training speaking for itself, if I had to guess.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with you on that. Like, obviously, that's what we teach is the messaging. For those of you guys who don't know what thought reversals are, it's basically a type of messaging where, and we'll go deeper in this on a different episode, but it's basically where we can kind of create content and messaging. And messaging is basically how the marketplace is going to perceive you, your business, and what it is that you do. And we can create that from a very polarizing place, which grabs attention, but it also shifts perspectives. It gets people to see things in ways they haven't seen before, which is actually like kind of shifting their reality, so to speak. Now, Jim, one of the things that you teach, and this is the concept that has literally like changed my life. I know it's changed my brother's life. And I know this is something that it's been kind of the platform of the messaging. It's been one of the models that we've really leaned into with your messaging.
Yeah.
But it's also like you've helped James Wedmore go from, 2 or 3 million to a year to 10 also because of this one model, which is the be, do, have model.
Right.
I would love if you could describe to the listeners what that model actually is and why not having this model is what's keeping them stuck.
Yeah, sure, sure. Most people work backwards. They work from have to be, and they work from let's take for example, and I would assume a lot of people listening to you, Brandon, are internet marketers, online businesses.
Yep.
So people will say things like, "Well, if I have or I had the money, then what I could do is I could invest in Brandon's program, or I could invest in a social media manager, or I could pay for Facebook ads." But because I don't have the money, I'm not going to do it. And because I don't do it, I'm never going to be successful. Now, they don't think through the chain all the way, but that's the chain. That's
Mhm.
the sequence of events. So people start from, if I don't have, I can't do. And they're always trapped in that. If I don't have enough time, enough energy, and enough money, then I can't do XYZ. Well, the reality is, if you never do the XYZ, then you never get the end result, which is to be successful. Where we have to work from is the reverse of that, be to have. Who do I have to be to do what I need to do to have what I have? And you're a great example of that. You look at all the people we know, and I'm just very candid. We know so many people that want to be internet marketers, but they won't do their webinars. They won't shoot their videos. They won't do the things that they need to do to grow their business. And then what I look at is how are they being that's preceding the doing.
Yeah.
So the very first webinar that you did, you told me you read that webinar,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
You typed it all out and you read it. So what I'm looking at there is you did something, you did the webinar. But what I'm looking at is who are you being? And you were being courageous. Now, it could be other things, but you were being courageous. The being courageous preceded the doing, which was reading word for word your webinar. Most people won't do their webinars because they're too afraid, which is a doing behavior. Therefore, they never get the success because they're not doing, because they're not being in a particular way that precedes the doing.
Yep.
Therefore, they spend their entire life going in circles.
Yep.
And, when I look at me, the way that I'm being with what I do with my own messaging is I am being aligned. I am being passionate. I'm being attuned. I mean, this is what I do. And I think when I get in that space, people see that. I'm guessing they see it and they feel it. But for everyone listening, you're working backwards. You're working backwards. If you say, I don't have enough time, enough energy, or enough money, you're already working backwards because you're working from circumstance. And when you work from circumstance, you will repeat your circumstances. That's what
Yes.
you're looking for, right?
Yeah. And so,
Okay.
and it, like the way I kind of describe it, and let me know if this is accurate, is that actions I guess actions will produce a certain result. And so if you take the actions of a $50,000 a year business, then you get the results of a $50,000 a year business. If you want the results of $1 million business, then you take the actions that $1 million business owner does, because that's what produces the results of $1 million business. And when I look back at what you've done, like even in this conversation, you're like, I don't work. I work 2 hours a week. I have worked less. I've set up a system. Basically what I'm hearing is I trusted my team. I trusted this.
Yeah.
I built out the systems. I built out the processes. And where most people might go like, it's not going to be done right if I don't do it. I can't trust my team because they might mess it up. Or if I trust my team, they might lose money. And those types of actions, or being, so to speak, keep that business owner stuck. But then what's actually ironic, and again, correct me if this is wrong, is when they then don't get the results that they want, it reinforces the
Then they
behavior.
quit.
Yeah. Or they quit or whatever. And then they go like, see, I can never do it. And then they get into this vicious cycle or hamster wheel. Correct?
Okay. I'm making some notes here. 1 second. So what I see a lot of is that people won't give it the time. They'll do something for a couple of months, and if they don't get the results that they want, then what happens is they quit.
Mm-hmm.
And what I notice you've been doing since I've known you, I guess you've owned your business now for 8 years.
Yep.
I've owned my business for a lot of years, and I shifted a couple of years ago. And even now, where we are right now, is we're shifting again to go to the next level again.
Yep.
Meaning we're at our bandwidth. I'm going to go a couple of places here. Most people do their business as like a hobby as well.
Yep.
Most people are not invested. Most people run their business by the circumstances. To give you the best example, is I have to sign it actually. It's in my email. I don't know the final amount, but what is the amount? It's like $73,000 that I'm signing a contract to work with your company.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's the point of that is that, for example, coronavirus is nobody saw it coming for the most part. We didn't know it's going to happen. So it affected the economy. The biggest mistake that most people make is they shut down when the economy is slow. Now, I mentioned the contract to you for $73,000 or whatever it is.
Yep.
Is the biggest mistake people make is they shut down. But I see successful people like me and you and James and Caitlin and different people that I coach and we know, and I coach many people that have a name. Here's the thing. When the economy slows down, that's when they speed up. That's when they speed up their investment.
Yep.
And then I look at what ways are we being that make anywhere from 1 to 10 million a year or more. What ways are we being that the masses are not being that allows us to create that kind of revenue? And most of it's pretty easy to make.
Yeah.
So then you brought up like people not turning their business over. James went from 2 million to 10 million when I told him to take his hands off the wheel.
Yep.
And, I coached Drew Canoli of Organifi, and his business does 100 million a year. And Drew says, and I agree 100%, is that you turn it over to a team member when they can do it 70% as good as you.
Yep.
But most people are so engaged and having their finger in everything in their business, which is the way they're being controlling, and they suffocate their business from the inside out.
Yep. or maybe they don't even start their business in the first place, or they never leave that job or whatever it is. And I would say, and correct me if I'm wrong, even if you're not an entrepreneur, take that out of the equation. There's probably a lot of unhappiness in people because they don't live the be do have model, but there's always some
Correct.
kind of desire that they want. They just never able to attain it.
Well, let me be really candid, and this is going to piss some people off, but let's just be candid. 70% of people, and I've got a very large podcast.
Yep.
70% of people who listen to my podcast or James's podcast or your podcast, what they will do is they'll say, wow, this is really, really good content. It really, really helps me. But you know what? I'm not going to do anything with it because I'm afraid.
Yep.
If I can't put, if I put myself out there, people are going to criticize me. People are going to judge me. People are going to make fun of me. What if it doesn't work in the way that I want it to work? What if I can't figure this out? What if I can't figure that out? And I'm going to tell everyone listening, the people who make really good money and help the world, we figure it out. We figure out a way and we make it happen. But then I go back to our ways of being. What ways are we being? And the number one way that we can be is to be resourceful. Many people want resources, meaning the money. If I have the money, then I can go do things. I'd rather have and be, I'd rather be resourceful and not have money than have money and not be resourceful.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just want to share
Can
that
I
because I
give
see
can I
that.
give an
Yeah, of
example of one of
course.
my friends who is, so to give you guys an example of what like resourceful actually means as an entrepreneur. So I have a friend who wanted to go, and Jimmy, I think you'll get a crack out of this. He basically, or a laugh out of this. He basically is a real estate agent, but like does commercial leases. And so he was like brand new to the market, no name, no whatever, no money for advertising. So what he actually did is went to Chamber of Commerce's in the city that he was in and around like the surrounding cities and said, I will come in and I'm going to teach you guys, teach everyone video marketing for social media. He came to me and was like, what do I need to do? I just told him how to basic stuff. And so what he did is the Chamber of Commerce is like, how much are you going to charge us in order to do these classes? Like, I'm going to do it for free. So what he did now is he now got himself in front of all of these business owners who are going to need commercial, like real estate leasing at some point, and started teaching them for free. And then at the very end of everything, or when he was showing the examples of video marketing, he was literally showing them his commercial, like his videos. He's like, here's what I did in my business and here's what I did. And then handed them like his cards for commercial leasing at the end of it. And he just told me right now, they've leased out like just from that, like $90 million worth of like real estate or something like that in the first year. And to me, that's what resourcefulness is. It's not saying I don't have the money for advertising. It's figuring out a way outside of the box to get the result that you want. Right.
How do I say this? When is this episode coming out? Like in the next 30 days?
I have no idea. A couple
Okay.
weeks.
Well, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but I look at people sometimes, and somebody asked me a question recently, even though they're in one of my coaching programs, they asked me a question. And I'm like, why don't you just go freaking Google it? Is it that hard to go Google this? Seriously? Go freaking Google it. And I see so many people asking so many questions that they could go Google. My point is that people don't, the masses, and guys, however you listening, you want to take it any way that you want. Because one-to-one, I only coach multimillionaires. I know how to get people to that level. And my point is I watch average earning people, they quit, and they quit very, very quickly in processes. I look back at you and where you are is you had to make this happen. I think you would have anyway, but you had to make your business happen. I mean, you had a wife, you were living in your in-laws' basement, right?
Mm-hmm.
But so many people, I think they work from, I don't have to make this happen. And if I don't, then I'll just hop to something else. But I see the masses, they don't figure things out. And a good friend of mine, her name is Shama Hyder. And I've known Shaman for a lot of years, and she's been in all the magazines. She's now a contributing writer at Forbes. Her company does millions and millions a year. She has 100 employees. Social media, I mean, she's been named like years ago, top 25 in the nation under 25, meaning entrepreneurs. Right now, LinkedIn calls her one of the top 10 marketing experts in the world. Shaman and I have been friends for a lot of years, and she said many years ago, and I agree, She goes, what separates people from people that are really successful from people that are not, and it's a way of being, people that are really successful, they will figure it out when they hit a wall. People that are not successful, they don't figure it out and they quit.
Yep.
And that all goes back to ways of being, Brandon. I mean, that's what you wanted to talk about, all ways of being. What way are you being? And when I go back, when I watched, or you told me about, when you read your webinar word for word, well, you did it because you were afraid because you didn't want to mess up.
Yeah.
But you were also being courageous in doing it.
Yep.
And most people will be like, well, I'm not going to do either one. And I look back that way. I think that for me, knowing you for many years, that moment, without even recognizing it for you, is a pivot point because you were courageous. And then I look at how many other times in your business you've been courageous and how much is that way of being, how much has it contributed to where you are today?
Yeah, 100%. And again, this can all, for everyone listening, this can all be applied outside of the business world too. Like I've used this method and referred back to this a lot of times to find happiness and overcome problems that I've had even outside of business. But I remember there's been a lot of times where like pivotal moments where I have been courageous, or the way I like to talk about it is I've basically walked off the cliff and hoped the net was going to appear or the
Yeah.
parachute was going to go. But I remember one specifically, and this, to be honest with you, this was the pivotal moment. I think you probably know what I'm talking about. The pivotal moment for me that literally changed everything in the direction of where we are today. And I was in a really bad spot. A lot of people know this story. Finished out 2017. We did $500,000 in revenue, hated what I was doing. I had a business partnership that ended right around that time as well. And I just said, I don't want to do any of this anymore. And then 3 months later, I found myself $40,000 in debt. And we were in Sedona
You and
having,
I were there together with James Wedmore
yeah.
that week.
Was
Yeah.
he there? Yeah, I guess he was. But I
Yeah.
remember like at lunch, it was just you and I.
Yeah.
And you basically said, I don't even think I told you that I was $40,000 in debt, but knowing you, you probably knew, sensed something was off. And so you just asked me, I remember you asked me like, where do you want to be a year from now? Or where are you going to be? And I just said, I'm going to have $1 million your business. And you said, well, you need help. You can't do this on your own. That's probably why you were burnt out and why you hated your business and all that stuff. And I said, I know, but I can't afford it. And you said, well, if you're going to be $1 million business right now, then what are you worrying about hiring someone for? What would the $1 million business owner do? And that's when I hired Taylor. And that's when we started the Video Forex Effect. And in 9 months, like I just remember that conversation. And over the next 9 months, I kept referring, what are they going to do? What are they going to do? That also led me to hiring Matt, who moved from Massachusetts out here, who's brought our service to a whole nother level. That was another moment for me of walking off the cliff and hoping the net was going to appear too. But it keeps elevating our business. And in that first 9 months, we did $1.2 million in sales, all because of that model. Now,
well,
go ahead.
Hang on though. So we were having lunch at some place that served rattlesnake on the main street, which we didn't have rattlesnake, but there was that country and western place, Cowboys or something.
Yep.
And you and I had this conversation. And I look back and I remember also, I think I knew you were in debt, but I remember I called you like 2 weeks later and I said, and I want everyone to hear this story. It's very short, but I said, do I need to loan you money? Do I need to send you $10,000, $20,000 so you can hire somebody? And you said, no, I will figure it out. It's exactly what I remember. I remember exactly where I was when I asked you that. Do you need money? And you said, no, I'll figure it out. And you did. And then we look back and a year later, you did 1.2 million in revenue. So for people listening, what do you think your main way of being was that shifted for you, that got you from 40,000 in debt on your credit cards? Because you don't do it anymore, but you were worrying that week when we were together.
Yeah.
We shared a place, the Airbnb, and you were worrying. And what changed in what single way of being changed in you that took you to 1.2 million a year later?
Are you asking me that question?
Yeah, I'm curious for people listening. What was the one way?
Well, I wasn't being a worrier. Like I wasn't worrying. But to me, it was more of powerful. Like if I could describe who I was in that 9 months, I felt very powerful, confident, and aligned is another word, but I would say like powerful creator is where I was and how I was being for that 9 months.
So everyone listening, listen to what he's saying. Instead of just starting with the doing, which is what everybody starts with, and then it wears off, you have to look at what ways are you being. And then you look at everybody that does really, really well in internet marketing. What ways are they being? And then you look at, cultural icons and business icons. What way is Elon Musk being? Or people like that, Bill Gates, any of these people, what way are they being? And everything starts there, because if you don't start there, you're going to be chasing your tail a year from now.
And here's what's amazing is that we're going through that experience and being, who I was being back in that situation, like it doesn't scare me. It kind of this like the situation almost stretched my reality to like both good and bad. That going back to that scenario, it's kind of like I don't even know why I was worrying about it in the first place. That's like easy to get over, you know. So it's kind of
Stop right
interesting.
there.
Okay.
Stop right there. So I want to take that to people. So you've done this for a long time.
Yep.
What way are most online entrepreneurs being in their business on a daily basis?
Well, most of them are scared,
Yeah,
worried, and focusing on like not possible. They're not focused on possibility. They're focusing on like consequences that could happen.
they're being afraid,
Yeah.
right? And I
Yep.
didn't mean to interrupt you, but I wanted people to, they're being afraid. And this is what I know also. A friend of mine, many years ago, he was a first round draft choice into the NFL. Only reason I say that, because he was a very successful guy in his field. He used to say, a scared man can't win. And then you look at that phrase that, well, most people don't play to win. They play not to lose.
Mm,
And most people play not to lose. And how are they being? They're being in fear.
yep.
So what you're really telling people in this podcast right now is, everyone, just look at your life. How much fear are you playing from? Because when you play from fear, you're not playing to win, you're playing not to lose, and you're going to play an entirely different game playing from that place.
100%. I totally agree. So this brings me up to the next point. And I think a
Yeah.
lot of people can leave this podcast and they'll be like, okay, great. I understand the concept, makes sense. But how do we know who to be, how to be? So like one of the examples that James likes to give is that I think it's like the person from Compaq or Hewlett Packard, some computer company, they went from like 10 million to 100 million in 3 years. And they asked like,
Mhm.
how did you do it? And he said, well, we just looked at what $100 million a year business does. And we just started doing that now
Yeah.
today. And so how do people know who to be, how to be, how do they self-identify what traits they have that are actually the things that they shouldn't be? How do we go through that process?
Modeling in neurolinguistics, it's called modeling. Is you look at what ways. Okay, so Joe Schmo or Jane Doe is making 20 million a year.
Yep.
What I would look at is, what are they doing? And then what way are they being that's creating and affecting the doing? We hear, like, for example, if not for Corona, we're still going to do really, really well.
Mhm.
But if not for Corona, we'd probably do $10 million in revenue in 2020, and easily,
Mhm.
easily. So Nikki, my director of operations, she hired two more new people. I
Can
mean,
I
in
can
the
I
middle of
interrupt you real
Corona.
quick?
Yeah, of course.
Something that's really interesting too is like even when you state we're going to do like there's not even an ounce of doubt in your voice. So it's really interesting hearing
No,
you talk about your goals and who you're being, even when you talk about the goals. And it's such a nonchalant like conversation. You're like, oh yeah, we're going to do blah 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 blah. But it's just kind of funny to point out like who you're being in that moment because you're just kind of like, oh yeah, no big deal, 10 million. Well, some people might try to hit 10 million and think, oh, it's such a hard goal. I hope I get it. I hope I get it. So anyways,
good God, no, 10 million. Well, as you know, 10 million's easy. People are doing it left and right around this. If
yeah,
they can do it, we can do it.
yeah,
And that was our goal for 2020. And we're still going to hit several $1 million in 2020 with coronavirus, and
yeah,
maybe even the 10 million. Who knows?
yeah,
You know what? Everything's a possibility.
yeah.
So when I look at ways of being, ways that we're being, Nikki messaged me a couple of days ago and she goes, we need a new social media manager and we need to hire another customer service person,
Mhm.
because our customer service person, we're going to put in a different role. And most people are cutting back with money. And I look at, well, what are their ways of being? And then some people can say, well, we don't have money. Well, you know what? Figure it out and go get money. There's always ways to get money. So then I'm looking at, okay, not a problem. Hire whatever we need, because guess what? And like Nikki, the way she put it to me, and I agree, is that to hit the 10 million or more mark, we need more infrastructure. We need more people in the business because we're literally at the end of bandwidth.
Yep.
Everyone's doing their job. Everyone's working 40 hours a week, et cetera. Everyone's at capacity.
Yep.
So we need to be a different way. So I basically look at Drew Canoli, 100 million a year. I've coached Drew, or James. I've coached James. What do they do differently than what I've done? Okay, expand smartly. So that's what we're doing. We're expanding the team in a smart way.
Yeah.
So literally you model and you look at what other people have done who've already done what you want to do, and you do what they do. And then you look at, well, who do I need to be able to do that?
Okay.
Simple answer.
From a business perspective, what I'm hearing is you model, yes, but you model behavior as well as actions. Is that correct? So like if you said you referencing what Drew did and what James did is they did infrastructure. They focused on infrastructure. So that was kind of like an action, whereas behavior might be you willingly take on that investment. Like the behavior there's behavior and actions. Is that correct? That we want to like model?
Well, I don't know because I'm kind of lost in the way you asked the question. Um,
Well, let's just look at like when I
yeah,
came.
give it a different way.
Okay, so when I came in and I made the decision to hire Taylor,
Got it.
there was an action of actually hiring, which you could classify as focusing on infrastructure because that's what $1 million businesses do.
Yeah.
But the behavior also shifted from being afraid and worried to powerful.
Okay.
Right. So it seems like there's kind of like a mindset or behavior shift of being as well as just certain type of actions that need to happen when you're looking at a business growth situation.
Let me keep it simple. Here's where I went. Who do I need to be?
Yep.
And what do I have to do to get to the next level?
Got it.
That was my only frame,
Okay.
literally. And so when I hired Nikki, I'm like, I need to hire a director of operations, a project manager, an integrator.
Yep.
There was no question about it because I know that ways that I'm not being and things that I'm not good at. I'm not a planner. I'm the visionary in the business. And I know that had I launched with what really launched me off the launch pad, starting, the webinar we sold out in 7 minutes.
Yep.
And had I done that without Nikki, it would have been a mess. Why? Because I'm not the organized person. That's not what I do. I'm not really great at organization.
Yeah.
It's not my skill set.
No.
But what I looked at, and when I look at money and investing money, all that I look at is, okay, where do we want to go? What needs to happen to get us there? Now, I want to point out, I don't worry about the rest because I know I don't have to now because I've got the money, but I'll figure it out. I will, just like you did, I will figure out what we need to do to put gasoline in the car. All that I know is the car needs to get rolling.
Yeah. And so I just want to make sure that distinction is very clear for all the listeners because, and Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, you can still do all the actions of that successful businesses do. But if you're not being the person you need to be while taking those actions, it's still not going to allow you to get the results that you want.
So what if I think I have 7 full-time or almost 8 people in payroll.
Yep.
And what if and these are not VAs, these are full people in payroll.
Yep.
What if, for example, I said, okay, Nikki, no, we can't grow because I'm afraid that, what if that person doesn't perform? I need to put more money in the bank. I need to hoard money. I need to watch all the money, track everybody's hours, put them all on Time Doctor, Time Monkey, whatever. I don't know what it's called. Time Doctor, whatever.
Time Monkey.
I don't know what it's called. There's something, some service. I don't know. Anyway.
Yep.
We got to track everybody because I'm afraid I'm going to lose money.
Yep.
I never came from there.
Yep.
Where I came from is hired the right people. I turned them loose. And we definitely, hiring's a very, very important thing. Hiring the right people and turning them loose, giving them ownership and letting them do their job.
Yeah.
But I never went into ways of being. I never went into, oh my gosh, did we hire the right person? Let me be afraid. Let me worry. Let me micromanage. Let me double check. I never went into any of that.
Yeah.
And that's a way of being. So yes, to your question.
Cool. It's such a freeing experience too. Just like finally letting go of all that stuff. It's like, my God, it's just like a weight off your shoulders. You could and you ever realize how strenuous it is just even physically on your body to always be in fear, worry, and just not being that person you need to be. But
let me add there before you go on. So one of he doesn't coach for me anymore, but he used to coach for me. And I said to him one time, he wanted to grow his business. And I said to him, this is what you need to do. You're not an executor. You don't know how to execute. I'm not an executor. I know that. I don't know how to execute. I'm the idea guy. And I said, this is what you need to do. You need to hire an integrator, somebody who can execute your business. You're the creative guy. You're the coach. Everything else, hire somebody to execute.
Yep.
I said, if you don't have that money, you find that money. Take one-to-one clients and get more one-to-one clients. You take all the money that you make from that one-to-one clients, put it aside and hire an integrator. Hire somebody to execute on what you can't do, or your business is never going to grow.
Yeah.
Grow. And I'm sharing that with people listening right now because you and I are very similar.
Yeah.
And the same thing happened to you and it happened to me. Once you hired Taylor, she could execute.
Yeah.
You're the idea person.
Yeah.
Same thing with Nikki and my team. When I hired people to execute, so I'm telling all of you guys, if you're not executing, look at that. And it may mean you're not one that can execute. Let me keep going here.
Yeah.
If we, for example, said, let's go to the moon,
Yeah.
I could say, okay, here's the thing. I can drive the rocket, but I can't build the rocket. That's not who I am. That's not what I do. You build the rocket, I'll drive it, we'll go to the moon together. So all of you guys listening right now, because there's a heavy percentage of you that just keep going in circles again, and it's because you're not executing. Find a way to hire somebody that can be that what we call an integrator for you to execute. That's what drove Brandon's business into seven figures, and that's what drove mine into where it is now.
Yeah. I think one of the easiest ways to identify the things that need to shift, or to like self-identify areas where you're not being where you need to be, is looking at the excuses you tell yourself over and over and over again. So like maybe you tried to go, be consistent in a workout class and you couldn't do that, or you tried to do this, that I would imagine. And Jim, do you think it's true that like they're probably using the same excuses to quit everything in their life, or does it tend to be different?
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
Yours was, I was at your house one time, the old house, and I'm like, you need to hire somebody to do all this for you. And you're like, I can't afford it. Can't afford it. I'm like, yes, you can. I mean, I knew your numbers back then. I'm like, you can afford it. You could afford it. You just didn't know you could afford it, or you didn't think you could afford it. And I'm going to tell you right now, just candidly, is you would be nowhere where you are right now, nowhere close to it, had you not hired an integrator.
Yeah. No, there's no doubt. There's no question in that. It's
Yeah.
100% true.
And your story was, I can't afford, I can't afford, I can't afford. And you could afford. You were just finding ways not to afford, and you were in your head about stories about not affording.
Well,
Absolutely.
I guess the more accurate story would have been, if it doesn't work out, I can't afford to lose this money, or at least that's another story, but that's kind of,
Interesting.
I guess,
Okay.
looking at it. Okay. So I want to take this a little bit. I know we're kind of running out of time here, so I want to take it one step further. So
Sure.
when people start businesses, or they're starting a venture, or just, I guess, anything in their life, they're already being who they are, but who they are has been learned along the way.
Mm-hmm.
So where do we start to learn who we are as a person? And because the thing is not, we go through life and we're not going like, oh, we're learning how to be. I would assume it's through experiences, what we've been indoctrinated to, our parents, but we are who we are. And it's kind of like we almost need to unshed that to get to the next level. But where does that creation even stem from?
You sent me a picture about 2 years ago in the living room of you and Will, your
Yep.
son, playing. And I responded back, you're teaching Will how to be playful, is what I responded back to. And I look at Will now. Geez, is Will 6 already?
Yeah.
Almost?
Yeah.
He'll be 6 in December.
Yeah.
Or he's at 5 and
He's 6.
quarter.
Yeah. He'll be 7 in December.
Oh, God.
Yep.
Geez. I was there when he took his first step in Boulder when we were on that trip.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And I said to you, I said, you're teaching Will how to be playful. And as I look at Will now that he's 6, your son is playful, but he learned it from you. He learned about humor from you. So let's imagine that you were like a really stoic person and you didn't like humor. He would have learned that. So people have learned to be who they are from their parents. No one ever says, well, I'm going to learn to be a certain way like you're talking about. They don't learn that.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't consciously talk about it. But so many of you are trapped by your grandparents and you don't even recognize it. Why? Because your grandparents grew up in the Great Depression with no money, and they trapped your parents who trapped you.
Oh, interesting.
And then they trapped you. Yeah, they trapped you in the belief system. And the whole belief system is money's hard to come by. You have to work hard for money. You got to work hard for money. And all these kind of things they've trapped you in that you're living in today that you don't even know you inherited from your grandparents. The reality is, Brandon knows this, is 100% possible 100% of the time.
Yeah.
But people have learned it by socialization from their parents.
And so, and this could be like from teachers and stuff too, right?
Of course.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So
I had somebody yesterday, in one of my transformational groups, they posted that they won't put themselves out in front of people. They just shot a video, their first video. And she goes, I won't put myself out in front of people because when I was in the second grade, a teacher made fun of me in front of everybody. Now, she didn't really recognize she carried that all the way through to adulthood, but she's not putting herself out in adulthood because she learned that in second grade when she was 7 years old.
That's so, I mean, there could be, well, how do we identify that stuff? Do we need to identify that stuff if we want to transform who we're being?
You don't need to identify it because you're probably never going to figure out where a lot of it came from. What I tell people is, okay, where do you want to go? What ways are you being? What ways are you being? Okay, well, where do you want to go? What ways do you need to be? What ways are you not being that's taking away from the ways that you need to be? Simple answer for you. So when you did your webinar and you read it,
Yeah.
you were being courageous.
Right.
And then I look back, here's what I know is that you're not afraid to put yourself out there. Everyone has things they're dealing with or whatever. One of your things that you're not dealing with that doesn't pertain to you is that you're not afraid to put yourself out there. I mean, even prior to that, you're doing YouTube videos for
Yeah.
years, right? And YouTube ranking. So, but here's the thing. I
And
guarantee.
I did them in Speedos.
Oh, that's right. You
At
did
least-
one
at
about
least one of
ranking.
them.
In ranking, that's right. So you're not afraid to be laughed at and put yourself out there. But what I look at is if what if you weren't a courageous person in that context? You never would have put anything out there. And had you never put it out, you wouldn't be where you are. You would be working somewhere today,
Yeah.
literally.
So
Literally, you'd be working for a living somewhere.
So had I not had if I had not learned to be courageous somewhere in my life, you're saying like everything could be
Correct.
completely done. So, I mean, as a parent, then how do we adjust this for kids? Because the thing is like, and I remember, your brother-in-law, the shaman we work with, told me, I can't remember if it was a private thing or if you and James were there too, but he said something, he was talking to me about raising kids. And he said that you have to be very careful of what you're indoctrinating your kids in, because you could be taking away free will, free choice. And you really don't want to indoctrinate them into your beliefs. You want them to kind of find their own beliefs. But for me, like, I look at this and I go, okay, great. I can teach my kids how to be an entrepreneur, but what if their path isn't to be an entrepreneur? So I kind of get into this like wormhole of like, okay, I know what works for me and I can teach my kids to be that, but what if that's not what they want to do? So what would you say to parents out there? Is it something you just do the best you can and teach your kids this concept, or can you be strategic about this?
That's what all parents do, is they do the best they can, even parents that mess up their kids, so to speak.
Yeah.
I mean, every parent's doing the best they can in any given moment. If I were raising kids, where I'd work from is how can I make this the most powerful, resourceful, loving kid that I can? What can I do to support that? What can I do to make this kid believe in himself, have confidence in himself? What can I do to make my kid feel good about himself or herself? That's exactly where I'd work from. Beyond that, it's to me, it's a dice roll.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what's going to happen in the world. You don't know what they're going to pick for a career or what they're going to do in the world. But what I would look for is what are the skill sets that are going to serve them best in the world, and those are things that I would instill as a kid. I mean, you're instilling, like if you look at Will, and Lily now is a little younger, but you look at Will. I don't think Will's afraid to put himself out there. He shows up, and I don't see him obviously as much as I'd like because we live 1,000 miles apart or 2,000 miles apart.
Yeah.
But I mean, he's playful, so he's going to carry that into adulthood, and it's going to be part of his personality. So what I look at if I had kids is what things could I instill in them and nurture that would be assets to them in community and socialization later in life.
Yeah.
That's what I would do.
Because those are all traits that no matter if they went into a job, a business, whatever career, it's going to benefit them in some way. So I love that. Cool.
Yeah. By the way, I've got 10 more minutes. So what else?
Well, I think that's about it. I was asking that last question because I was more curious of like how to raise your kids. Like, I think the deeper I get into this work, the more I see how damaging or beneficial beliefs can be for people. So I'm always kind of like looking at my kids and wondering, am I really screwing them up, or am I really setting them up for success? So yeah, it's kind of interesting to hear you say that. And I think, teaching people or showing people how to learn, like self-identify how to be was really powerful. So,
I look back when I was at your house,
Yep.
and I've always seen you be a very patient dad with your kids, always, with one exception. You and I were, you and I were there. His son was about 3 years old at that time, and his son was just wearing the patience. I mean, he was just wearing it. And you grabbed him by the arm, and not a hurtful way. You just grabbed him and shook him a little bit, like you didn't shake him. You grabbed him, and it startled him because you grabbed
Yeah,
him.
I don't
Because
need
you
Child Protective Services showing up at my
exactly.
door right now,
You
Jim.
don't,
So
well, you don't grab your kids. You don't do that.
yeah,
But he was startled that you basically like, hey, Will, pay attention. And the look on his face was priceless because he's like, what's happening here? What are you doing, pulling my arm? And I look at it now, but I've watched you as a dad, and you're always, and I mean like always, always, always the patient dad with your
yeah.
kids. I mean, the reason people watching it, you would laugh if you saw it on video because this kid was stunned. I mean, not in a physical way, but like, what are you doing?
I still remember his eyes when he looked at me because I don't think I've ever been that aggressive with him, but that kid, that MFer was, my God, he was on another level. And all you parents out there, you totally understand, but
every parent knows it. But the thing is, that's the only time. And that's why he was startled. He's like, what are you doing, dude? Grab my arm.
Yeah.
But I've never, the only way I've seen you be always is patient and supportive of your kids.
Yeah.
And I think that's a major thing for parents is to be patient and be supportive. And even right now, with coronavirus, I'm wondering about all the things that are going on and all these families are trapped at home. I'm wondering how are patients being patient and parents being patient and supportive of their kids with being trapped at home now. I mean, we're all trapped at home for the most part,
Yeah.
But anyway, I just wanted, that's where, be mindful.
Well,
what are the ways?
What's really interesting is now that you're bringing a lot of this stuff up, I look at my childhood, and my mom and dad, I'm modeling my mom and dad. I don't even know why I didn't realize it right now, but a lot of the way of being playful I'm with my kids is actually how my mom was with me. And you've met my mom. My mom can be intense and she can be a major energy drainer, but at the same time, her childhood was not good. Like her childhood, there's abuse and there's just like destruction of family. Like it just was not good. And she broke the model, the cycle with us, which I'm very grateful for. And it's coming through in my grandkids, my dad, or my kids. My dad was also very extremely patient with us too, like even more patient than I was. And so I guess it's in right now, like, and I've talked to you about this. My mom is just, my interpretation or my story around my mom is that she's just very controlling and it's a kind of a repeating thing. But now I'm actually looking back going like, she's actually left a lot of really good things that are coming through in my kids. And just how I'm being as a parent is just straight from her. So thank you for that. I didn't even realize it till right now.
Yeah, no. And, for anyone listening, everyone listening is that, Brandon, like I said, I think your biggest assets is you're patient and you're loving with your kids. And so let's go back to a takeaway is, what tools do you want your kids to have later in life? What ways do you want them to be? You don't start teaching them when they're 12, 13, or 14. The mold's already been set by that time. You're teaching your kids how to be who they are when they're literally 2 and 3 and 4 years old.
Yeah.
Who you teach them to be 2 and 3 and 4 years old will be who they become when they're adults.
Yeah, 100%. Well, Jim, thank you so much for spending the time with us and walking us through all of that. We'll definitely have to have you come back on because I wanted to go a little deeper on certain things, but maybe we can do a part 2, have you back on. But I'm just so grateful for everything you've done for me over the years, the expertise and the knowledge you shared today, and very grateful. So thank you for everything.
Absolutely, bro.
Talk to you soon.
All right. Is that a wrap? Okay. Yep. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Right. Hey guys, thank you so much for checking out another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, go below, hit the subscribe button, and make sure you click on that bell icon and get notified every time we drop a new episode. Now, if you're looking for the show notes, we have them linked underneath this video, as well as our social media handles and some links to free training and offers that we drop from time to time to help you guys even further. So go check those out if you're interested. And thank you so much for tuning in to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast.